In this video, we're going to talk about how to allocate the cost of a support department based on your actual capacity. So let's say that you have an auto manufacturer with two operating divisions. You make cars and you make trucks. But you've got this IT department that provides tech services to each one of these divisions. So one way that you could go about allocating the cost of the IT department is that you could take all the fixed costs and you could take the variable cost that you expect based on the budgeted hours for each division, right? So you say, okay, I think that the car division is going to use 6,000 hours of the IT department, and then the truck division is going to take 9,000 hours, and you could do a single rate where you basically say, okay, this is going to be $6 million in cost, and then there's going to be another $4.5 million in variable costs, and you come up with a single overhead rate of something like, let's say, $700 an hour, and then you apply that based on the actual hours, right? That's one way of doing it. Another way is to look at the practical capacity that you have, right? And this is regarding when we're thinking about fixed costs. Given that we have $6 million in fixed costs, right? These are not going away, right? And at least in this period, right? This is fixed. It's not variable. We've got this $6 million. It's sunk, right? It's spent. And so given this $6 million, we could provide, in terms of capacity, 24,000 hours of service, right? Now, that's not getting into the variable cost. That's a different thing, right? The variable cost, we're budgeting $300 per hour. But just in terms of the fixed costs, we could provide, for the $6 million, up to 24,000 hours of service. So that's our practical capacity, right? That's the max capacity for these amount of fixed costs. So what we could do is we could take this fixed cost of $6 million and divide it by 24,000, right? And so then that'll give us an amount that we can then allocate. Okay, so let's say we do that. Let's take the $6 million and divide it by 24,000. That's going to give us a fixed cost of $250 an hour. And I'm just gonna put that here. This is the fixed cost. This is based on capacity. Based on the capacity, we'll say $250 an hour. So when we go to allocate the cost to the car division, for example, what we'll do is we'll take the actual hours of 8,000, right? And then we'll allocate that based on this budgeted variable cost of $300 per hour, and then the fixed cost based on $250 per hour that was computed based on the overall capacity, right? And I'm going to explain we'll get into why we're doing that in a minute and the importance, but let's just go ahead and calculate this out. So now we've got our $250 per hour that we calculate for the fixed cost based on capacity. So let's look at the car division. We have 8,000 actual hours, right? So what we're going to do is for the car division, it'll be 8,000 in terms, now we're allocating the cost of the support department, the IT department, 8,000 times 550. Now you say, why 550? Well, we're adding in the variable cost too, right? So the 300 plus the 250. So that's going to equal $4.4 million. Okay. Now let's do the truck division. Okay. So now truck division had 7,000 actual hours. So we're going to 7,000. We're going to multiply that by 550. Okay. That's going to equal $3.85 million. So $3,850,000. Now the nice feature of doing this by capacity is now we can say, hey, wait a minute. We thought that we had a max capacity of 24,000 hours based on the $6 million that we spent in fixed costs, right? 24,000 hours. That was what our fixed costs would get us. But we only have, let's see, 8,000 and 7,000 is 15,000, right? So if we take that 24,000, right, max capacity, and then subtract the 8,000 actual here for the cars, and then the 7,000 for the trucks, the actual, that leaves us with 9,000 hours unused capacity related to those fixed costs. So what we can do what we can do here now is we can actually calculate the cost of that unused capacity. So we'll take 9,000, but here notice we're not going to multiply it by 550 this time, right? Because the variable cost doesn't have anything to do with the unused capacity. It's the fixed cost, right? That's that 250 per hour. So we're going to multiply that 9,000 times 250, right? That's going to give us $2,250,000. Oh, make sure I get that doesn't look like a zero. $2,250,000. So if we, as a manager, if we're thinking, okay, how much unused capacity did we have? Given the amount we spent on fixed costs, how much was idle, right? How much idle capacity did we have? Was $2,250,000, right? So that'll give us an idea in the future when we're trying to figure out how much to spend on fixed costs in the future, right? Because in the long run, all fixed costs are variable, right? Because in the long run, you can change things, right? This year, they were fixed, but this kind of, we say, hey, we're getting caught with a lot of idle capacity that our divisions aren't using, right? So now, just to check and make sure you didn't make a mistake here, what you could do is you could add up these costs you allocated. So the 4.4 million plus the 3.85 million plus the 2.25 million, right? So if you add all that up, that's going to give you $10,500,000. Now, 4.5 million of that had to do with just the variable costs of production, right? But if you subtract out those variable costs, that's going to give you 6 million in fixed costs. 6 million in fixed costs. Now let's take that 6 million and let's go back and check our work. And if you see, what we originally had was 6 million in costs for the IT department. So what we've done, instead of with the single rate method where we're just going off of what the budgeted hours are, for example, or doing something like that, then just allocating the car and truck division, what we're doing here with practical capacity is we're calculating the cost of the idle unused capacity.